It begins with a breath, a faint stirring of parchment in the hush of a forgotten chamber. A brittle sheet, yellowed with centuries, lies curled like a sleeping serpent on a stone table. Its edges are frayed, its center faded, its lines drawn with ink so pale it appears at first like veins of light caught between dust and shadow. It is said this map was not drawn, but whispered into being. Not crafted by cartographers, but dreamt by wanderers who closed their eyes beneath a desert moon and saw the dunes shift like tides. The parchment holds no compass rose, no borders of kingdoms, no names etched in permanence. It shows instead a land that breathes, a land of sands that drift as waves do, never the same from one night to the next. A lone traveler, cloaked in silence, bends over it now. His fingers trace the faintest curve of a river that no longer flows. He leans close, as if listening for the voice of water that has long since dried into memory. The map shivers beneath his touch, as though reluctant to reveal its secrets. And so the story begins. It is said that beneath the deserts we know today, there once lay rivers, broad, glistening arteries that carried life through a kingdom now erased. Oases flowered like emerald constellations across the sands. Villages clustered around pools of fresh water, and palaces of limestone and alabaster rose beside the flowing streams. Their gardens, watered by the river's generosity, bloomed with lilies and palms. Their courtyards rang with the laughter of children, the prayers of priests, the murmurs of markets that smelled of myrrh and cinnamon. But rivers are not eternal. Some claim the waters withdrew slowly, turning soil to dust grain by grain, year by year. Others whisper that the loss came all at once, a vanishing act wrought by a divine hand, punishment for arrogance, or perhaps a lesson to those who believed eternity could be drawn into stone. When the waters left, the kingdom turned to salt. Pools became basins of whitened crystals. Gardens shriveled. Towers stood like skeletons in the glare of the sun. What was once laughter became only the wail of wind passing through hollow windows. The people scattered, their footsteps carried away, until silence claimed the streets. The traveler bends closer to the map, and the ink beneath his eyes shimmers. For though the parchment is faded, it holds strange layers, as if written in different hands, across different ages. Some marks are soft curves, as though painted in water. Others are etched sharp and jagged, as though carved with the tip of a blade. Between them lie faint symbols, circles crossed with spirals, stars marked with tiny strokes, signs that no one now can read. It is said these marks are not merely lines, but breaths of memory, placed upon parchment like offerings. Each cartographer did not chart the desert as it was, but as it appeared in visions. And so, the map is not geography but dream. He follows one such line, a river that winds across the parchment like a snake of smoke. It does not match any known land. Yet the traveler has heard whispers of buried chambers, where walls are crusted with salt like frozen tears. He has heard tales of broken statues, their features blurred, their lips white as though silenced by centuries. Legends tell of wells that lead not to water but to hollow echoing voids. The desert is full of such whispers. Every dune is a veil. Every hollow hides an echo. Whispers tell us of caravans lost to horizons that never ended. Men and women who set out following faint instructions, drawn by maps like this, hoping to find what was lost. Some say they found cities buried to their rooftops in sand. Some claim they saw towers rising like mirages, only to dissolve when approached. Others returned with nothing but silence in their eyes, as if what they had seen was not meant to be spoken. The traveler, too, follows. In his mind's eye, he walks the path of this brittle map. Step by step, through the hush of shifting dunes. He imagines the stars above, bright fires watching silently as they once watched the rivers. He hears the hush of sand brushing stone, a sound like scripture being recited by the earth itself. The map leads him not to treasure, not to cities alive, but to silence, to chambers where the air tastes of minerals, where walls gleam faintly in moonlight like crystal. He sees a place where once water lapped against stairs, now only white salt crusts their steps. He sees a courtyard where palm roots stretch into emptiness, holding nothing. He sees inscriptions on walls, prayers for water, for shade, for life, all unanswered. And yet, beneath the silence, there is presence, a feeling that the desert remembers. It is said that the desert keeps what it wishes to keep. That knowledge is not lost, but slumbering. That silence itself is a form of memory. The map, brittle though it is, does not end in certainty. Its lines dissolve at the edges, as though refusing to be followed past a point. No border encloses it. No mark declares, here the kingdom lies. Instead, it fades into nothing, into the whiteness of parchment, the blankness of night. Perhaps this was deliberate. Perhaps those who drew it knew that some truths are not meant to be uncovered. That to search too closely is to shatter the fragile veil of mystery that gives life its depth. The traveler lifts his eyes from the map. Around him, the chamber is quiet, only dust moving in slow spirals through shafts of moonlight. He breathes in, and the air carries the faint taste of salt. He feels the weight of centuries pressing, not as burden, but as silence. A silence vast enough to hold all the voices of the past. Some believe the map leads to nothing. Others claim it leads to everything, to the heart of memory itself. The desert, after all, is not empty. It is filled with echoes, with the traces of rivers long gone, with the breath of civilizations that once believed themselves eternal. The sands shift, but beneath them, stories remain. The traveler rolls the map closed. The parchment sighs, as though relieved. He places it back upon the stone, where it curls once more like a sleeping serpent. He does not need to follow it any further. The journey has already happened, within silence, within imagination, within the echo of rivers that once sang. Outside, the dunes breathe beneath the moonlight. Their curves shine like waves of an ocean turned to stone. The wind moves softly across their ridges, shaping verses in sand. To listen is to hear scripture written not in ink, but in breath. And so, the chapter ends as it began, with silence. The map dissolves not in fire, not in water, but in the simple stillness of forgetting. What remains is only the hush of the desert under starlight, vast and eternal. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps the kingdom sleeps still, its rivers flowing only in dream. Perhaps some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And if you close your eyes now, you may hear it. The faintest sound of water beneath the sand. The memory of a kingdom that turned to salt. The scripture of silence, carried on the breath of the desert, as the night folds gently around you. It begins with a contradiction. A city that drowned without a sea. A city swallowed not by flood, but by thirst. Imagine it, towers rising in a desert now barren. Their walls carved with delicate patterns of lilies and waves, symbols of rivers that no longer run. Imagine plazas paved with stone, their fountains once dancing with water that caught the sunlight like liquid fire. Imagine the sound, the laughter of children splashing their hands, the murmur of vendors offering dates and figs, the slow chanting of priests calling upon deities who guarded the springs. Now imagine silence. The fountains dry, the courtyards hollow, the air hot and motionless as a held breath. The city remains, but emptied, as though its soul has departed. This is the city that drowned without water. It is said that the city was once the jewel of its kingdom, placed at the meeting point of several life-giving streams. Here, wells never ran dry. Here, travelers came to rest, camels kneeling in shaded courtyards, their burdens laid upon stone floors still cool from morning waters. Some called it the oasis of eternity, believing that its fountains flowed from the deep veins of the earth itself. But eternity, as the desert teaches, is fragile. Whispers tell us of a great change, a long unweaving of the waters. Some claim it was the sun itself that turned its gaze more fiercely upon the city, drinking the rivers until none remained. Others believe the people grew careless, draining the wells without balance, pulling life too quickly from the hidden aquifers below. Still others whisper of a curse, an unseen hand closing the gates of water forever. Whatever the reason, the fountains stopped. slowly at first, then all at once. And when the water left, the city drowned in its absence, suffocated by thirst. Walk with me, if you will, through its empty streets. The stones are bleached by centuries of sun, their carvings worn smooth as the breath of wind passes over them again and again. Windows stare blankly, hollow eyes gazing into endless sand. There are courtyards where pools once reflected the sky, now filled only with dust. A statue of a woman pours a jug, but nothing flows from her hands. She is frozen in her offering, her arms outstretched forever toward absence. Step into the temple. Its pillars rise high, carved with waves, with reeds, with lotus blooms. All symbols of water now forgotten by the ground beneath. Priests once walked here, their footsteps softened by cool shadows. They lit lamps by sacred pools, believing each drop mirrored the heavens. Now the pools are cracked basins, and only dust gathers in their hollows. Silence echoes. You can almost hear the voices that once prayed, but they are faint, as if drifting up from some submerged memory. It is said that when the water left, the people did not leave at once. They waited, believing the drought was only a test. They rationed what remained, pouring water into the temple basins as offerings, even as their own throats grew dry. They sang the old hymns, their voices hoarse, their bodies weary. They hoped the gods would hear, that the rivers would return. But the wells gave only emptiness. The springs whispered nothing. One by one, families departed, scattering into the horizon. Some carried vessels of brine, bitter remnants of what once had been fresh. Some carried seeds they could no longer plant. Others carried only silence. When the last to leave looked back, it is said they saw the city gleam under the sun like a shell washed ashore, beautiful but lifeless, hollow but radiant. And they wept, not for what they lost, but for what the city itself had become. A relic of thirst, a monument to absence. Even now, some travelers claim to find its remains. They speak of walls half buried in dunes, stairways leading down into empty cisterns. They tell of inscriptions carved on stone tablets, prayers written in flowing lines, water, return. They tell of jars sealed with clay, opened centuries later to reveal only dust where once water was kept. Others say the city is not truly gone, that it drifts like a mirage, appearing at twilight when the air is soft and shimmering. Some claim they have walked its streets, hearing footsteps that were not their own, smelling the faint sweetness of dates ripening in a market that no longer exists. Yet when they reached for fruit, for water, for voice, there was nothing, only the whisper of sand. Perhaps the city does not exist in stone anymore. Perhaps it lives only in memory, a memory shared between the earth and the dreamer. If you close your eyes now, you can almost feel it. The heat of its stones under bare feet, the cool shade of archways that no longer stand, the anticipation of water that never comes. Listen closely. The silence here is not empty. It hums, like a song too deep to be heard with the ears, a resonance carried in the bones. Perhaps it is the sound of water that once was. Perhaps it is the echo of prayers rising still, unanswered yet eternal. For though the city drowned without water, it has not vanished. It lingers, suspended between presence and absence. It is both ruin and mirage, both truth and dream. It is a reminder that even absence has weight, even silence has voice. And so we leave it, this city of thirst. We leave its streets hollow, its fountains dry, its temples carved with waves that no longer flow. We leave it not with answers, but with the same question that lingers in its stones. What happens to a place when what sustains it disappears? The desert does not answer. The stars do not answer. Only the silence remains, vast and luminous, cradling the city in its arms. Perhaps it was never meant to be found again. Perhaps its drowning was a kind of offering, the return of all things to silence. Perhaps, even now, it waits for water that will never come, dreaming of rivers beneath the sand. And as you drift deeper into the quiet of the night, you may hear it too. The city that drowned without water. Its silence like a tide, pulling you gently inward. toward stillness, toward forgetting, toward sleep. It begins with a threshold, an arch of pale stone rising from a slope of quiet sand, its curve smooth as a moonlit rib, its face carved with spirals and small, star-marked circles. No wall extends from it, no road leads to it. It stands alone beneath the open sky, a door without a room, a gate without a city, an invitation drawn in air. It is said the gate remembers footfalls that no longer fall, voices that no longer speak, prayers that have folded back into breath. It is said the gate is older than the dunes that cradle it, older than the names worn smooth from its lintel. Some believe it was raised to mark the edge of a sacred precinct where sand and spirit touched. Others say it was never a boundary at all, but a hinge between worlds, opening not into land, but into the silence that holds all things. Tonight the air is still. The desert inhales. The stone cools. On the threshold, a shadow gathers like a soft robe and loosens again. The traveler draws near, unhurried, as though answering a call he has always known. He brings no torch, no measure, no proof, only breath, only listening. He pauses at the first step. Marked by the moon, the carvings bloom. A helix of wind, the outline of a feather, 7 small cuts like lines of a calm palm. He lifts his hand, not to touch, but to bless the space with nearness. The gate does not move. Yet, beneath the silence, something stirs. Whispers tell us the gate once opened with the passing of 7 winds. Not storms, not tempests, but currents of invisible presence, each with its own timbre and task. The first was the dawn wind, thin as a reed flute, drawing sleep upward like a veil. The second was the wind of travelers, carrying dust and quiet laughter from caravan to caravan. The third, the healing wind, passed through bones like cool water passes through stone. The fourth, the memory wind, returned forgotten names to the tongue. The fifth, the orison wind, lifted prayers to where the stars keep watch. The sixth, the night wind, closed the petals of the heart for rest. The seventh, no one agrees. Some say it was the wind of endings, others the wind of homecoming. Some insist the seventh had no name because what is last cannot be spoken. It is said those who waited within the arch could feel each passage as a tone, a quiet note played on the instrument of air. The gate itself did not swing or creak. It widened, the way dawn widens, the way an eye widens, the way the soul widens when the beloved arrives. A widening one can only sense by stillness. Pilgrims once came to stand in that stillness. They brought offerings, not gold, not weapons, but simple things. A sprig of desert herb to sweeten the breath, a strip of linen to bind a vow, a bead of blue glass to mirror the sky. Some left their sandals at the step and entered barefoot, as if crossing into a quiet temple without walls. Some came to ask for healing that doctors could not name. Some came to surrender the weight of a memory that pressed on their ribs like a stone. Some came simply because the gate was there and called. The traveler sits by the threshold until the body softens. He is not first, not last. The sand keeps company with many who pause here. The wind has memorized their shapes and folded them into drift. In the stillness he rests, and the desert opens like a slow book. It is said the builders were people of the breath. They listened to the mouth of caves, the throats of canyons, the subtle vows of mourning. They mapped the valley's winds the way others map rivers, and then raised this arch where the currents braided in a quiet knot. Their stone is not monumental. It is modest, almost shy, a ring against the sky, a rim for what is otherwise formless, the way a cup gives water a place to be. Their art was to frame the unsayable, to give passage to what already passes. In the carvings we glimpse their language. Spirals for uncoiling time, small circles for the eyes of stars, reed leaf lines for the reed's whispered song. A single figure, not a king or priest, but a person of ordinary posture, stands at the center of the lintel, palms open, as if receiving the wind like a blessing. There is no sword, there is no throne, only breath and the dignity of standing in it. The traveler bows to that nameless figure. He steps beneath the arch. Beneath the silence, a tone, not sound exactly, a feeling at the edges of hearing, like the breath of a sleeping child against the hollow of the neck. The traveler does not chase it. He waits and lets it come. The first wind passes, dawn. It brushes his eyelashes like moth wings and seals the lids for a heartbeat. He sees a pale wash of color behind his eyes. It is the hour when shadows release their grip and shapes grow soft. He remembers mornings long ago, when the world was simpler not because it was kinder, but because it was closer. He breathes. The gate widens. Then the wind of travelers, slow and steady, carrying the taste of distant courtyards, the murmur of markets veiled by time. It threads through the cords of his neck and loosens them, so that the head sits more gently on the spine. He feels the hum of footsteps he has never taken, the sorrow of departures he has never made, the joy of arrivals that might yet be. He breathes again. The gate widens. The healing wind glides next. It does not stitch bone or erase hurt, but it brings kindness to the places that hold. It moves along the rib cage like water, finding the narrow room where the heart hides old salts, old shells, old vows. It is said healing is not repair, but remembrance of wholeness. The traveler remembers his first name, not the one given at birth, but the one spoken by silence when he is alone and honest. He breathes. The gate widens. The memory wind follows, carrying fragments. A lamp lit in a small room, voices at a low table, a field of straw under a moon. It returns what was never truly lost, only laid aside so that life could move forward. He does not clutch the images. He lets them drift through like birds that know the way. In their passing, they bless the day he has already lived. He breathes. The gate widens. The orison wind arrives. Prayer without words. Prayer that does not ask. The traveler's spine lengthens as if a subtle chord were being tuned between crown and earth. The breath lengthens also, and at the end of the exhale, there is a small, bright stillness. A lamp no storm can touch. He offers nothing but that stillness. He breathes. The gate widens. Night moves in. The night wind comes, gentle and sure, tucking the world into its own body. It lowers the lids of sight without darkness, lowers the lids of thought without argument. It is the hand that smooths the linen. It is the hush that gathers around a name. The traveler feels his weight settle into his feet. He breathes. The gate widens. And the seventh, the traveler does not know. No name, no sign, only a depth like the moment before rain when the earth leans upward. Perhaps it is ending, perhaps homecoming, perhaps it is the space in which such words dissolve. He offers the breath without holding either shore. The arch does not change, yet he senses a vastness open. Not ahead, not behind, but in the small chamber behind the breastbone, where a gate of the same shape has waited all along. It is said the gate was a meeting place for the unseen. Messengers crossed here without footprints. Dreams exchanged their garments and walked out into waking. Old pain set down its staff, sat upon the step, and rested long enough to become wisdom. The builders understood that the world is a weave of currents, and that sometimes the kindest work is simply to tend the weave. Why then, ask the doubters, is the gate alone? Where is the city that should have gathered to its shelter? Where are the walls and gardens and the wells that sing? Where memory fades, silence answers. Perhaps the city was never stone but breath itself, the slow city of a people who lived by listening. Perhaps the walls were the boundaries of attention, the gardens the places they tended with presence. Or perhaps time carried their houses away grain by grain, and only the most patient architecture endured. A pure threshold, kept by wind and moon. Whispers tell us that when the last of the builders left, they turned and raised their hands in gratitude, not sorrow, for they believed nothing made of listening is ever lost. It transfers itself into the air, into the small kindness between strangers, into the sleep that heals without permission. They left the gate to the winds, and the winds kept faith. The traveler lingers. He thinks of the people who once stood here as he stands. A woman with an aching shoulder, breathing the healing wind until her arm grew lighter. A boy who could not remember his grandfather's face, waiting in the memory wind until the eyes came back, clear and laughing. An old man whose heart was crowded with prayers he had no words for, standing in the orison wind until prayer became breath itself. He thinks of their sandals by the step, of the linen tied around the lintel like a small flag of surrender, of the beads pressed warm from being held too long. He places no token, yet he leaves something. He leaves the habit of hurrying. He leaves the need to name the seventh wind. He leaves the thought that gates must open in the visible world to be true. The moon lifts. The arch's shadow curves like a guarding arm over the sand. The carvings dim, but their shapes remain in the mind as if drawn there by a soft hand. The traveler steps back over the threshold. The night neither closes nor changes, and yet everything is deeper by a layer of calm. It is said the gate does not bless only those who come. It blesses those who hear of it, those who imagine it, those who let their breath be an arch through which the winds pass. To listen is to stand within it. To exhale is to widen it. To rest is to be received by it. Now the desert is a single, shadowed ocean, its waves asleep. The stars are white seeds pressed into velvet. The traveler turns to the open world and begins to walk, not away, not toward, but with. The sand gives. The night accepts. Somewhere a small creature writes an unreadable script with its feet. Somewhere a dry flower shuts its silent bell. He thinks of thresholds, the lines between sound and silence, between light and the soft dark, between waking and the sweet country of sleep. He thinks that all sacred things are gates and simple ones. A cup, a doorframe, an eyelid, a breath. Perhaps it was never meant to be found by many. Perhaps the gate was raised for the winds alone, and the winds, companionable, receive anyone who remembers to be still. Perhaps the seventh wind has already passed and passes always, the unmarked current that carries us from task to rest, from speaking to quiet, from thinking to being. The traveler does not look back. There is no need. The gate stands whether seen or not, as all thresholds do. The moon pours its pale blessing. The stone inhales the night. Beneath the silence, a last echo, or is it a fore-echo? Tender as the sigh of linen. Then only the faint music of breath, moving in and out, like tide against an unseen shore. We leave the gate as we found it. Undefended, patient, clothed in dust and starlight. It offers nothing but passage, nothing but the shape of welcome. And you, listening now, feel that shape tracing itself upon the inside of your chest. A calm arch where the seven winds may enter and depart without fear. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Some doors only open when we remember we are already on both sides. Rest now. The night keeps watch. The gate will remain. A circle of stone laid upon the breath of the world, while sleep, marked by the moon, gathers you like sand gathered by the gentlest wind, and carries you inward, past the visible, into the quiet country where no names are required. It begins underground. A breath of air, cool and faint, drifts upward from a crack in the stone. Beneath the desert floor, hidden from the eye of the sun, there lies a sanctuary, a temple carved into earth itself. Its entrance is almost nothing. A stairwell sinking into shadow, framed by rock worn smooth by centuries of silence. Few would notice it. Fewer still would descend. And yet, those who once entered believed they were stepping not into earth, but into the firmament itself. For the ceilings of this temple are painted with constellations. Stars traced in ochre, in lapis, in gold dust that still glimmers faintly in the thin light of the moon. They no longer align with the heavens above. Ages have shifted the sky. But here, in this hollow chamber, the night remains as it was millennia ago. Fixed, unchanging, eternal. It is said the priests of this place were not keepers of flame or sacrifice, but keepers of starlight. Their task was to mirror the heavens upon stone, to create a map where time itself could be paused. They believed the soul was not bound to the body, but to the stars, that when breath left the lips, it did not vanish, but rose like a spark to join its constellation. And so they painted the sky below the ground, a mirror for the sky above, a double night in which the living could walk among the dead. They lit oil lamps in the vast chamber, each flame flickering like a star's reflection, until the ceilings trembled with galaxies of light. Shadows danced upon pillars carved with celestial signs, bending and shifting like tides of the unseen ocean. The rituals here were not loud. They were not spoken in cries. They were whispered, breath against stone, hands raised not in conquest, but in quiet alignment. Each gesture a reminder, as above, so below, as within, so without. Step with me into the chamber. The air is cool, tasting faintly of dust and ash. Your footsteps echo, softened by the vastness. All around you rise pillars marked with figures. Not kings, not warriors, but stars given human form. A hunter with bow drawn, a maiden carrying water, a lion poised to leap. Each is crowned with orbs of gold, glinting still as if starlight itself has been trapped within the stone. Above, the ceiling curves like the inside of a dome. Across its surface spreads a sky no longer seen. Constellations once bright in the firmament, now faded from human memory. Some patterns are familiar: Orion's belt, the curve of the Great Bear. Others are lost, nameless to our tongues, belonging to a cosmology we cannot recover. The priests who knew them are dust. Their voices no longer speak, and yet the stars remain. Whispers tell us that at the equinox, when night and day are equal, a shaft of moonlight pierced through a narrow opening above the stair, falling precisely on the painted star of Sirius, the brightest star of the ancient sky. They say the temple itself was aligned to this light, so that once each year the heavens would enter, blessing the chamber with its mark. It is said that the priests believed the stars were not simply distant fires, but ancestors. Each light a soul, each constellation a gathering of those who had come before. To stand in this temple was to stand among the dead, and yet it was not mourning they felt, but kinship. Imagine the silence.
À Indred Lanly.
Shadows flickering across the painted constellations. A priest raises his hand and breathes, his words scarcely audible, his prayer more silence than sound. Around him, worshippers close their eyes, imagining the sky above reflected in the stone below. For a moment, earth and heaven are not separate. They are the same. Some believed that by entering the temple, one entered the night itself. That by standing beneath its painted constellations, the soul could travel, not outward, but inward, into the great ocean where time is not measured by days, but by stars. Some claimed visions came in this place. A face seen long gone. A voice heard, though no lips moved. A light burning in the chest, too vast to name. But time, like water, wears away even what is hidden. The priests passed into dust. The rituals ceased. The lamps grew cold. The temple remained, but empty. The stars above drifted in their courses, leaving behind their painted reflections, now misaligned, now forgotten. What once was a mirror became only memory. Yet still the chamber breathes. The walls hold the echo of chance. The ceiling glimmers faintly, as if refusing to release its sky. The silence is deep, deeper than any silence on the surface. It wraps around you like a shroud, yet it is gentle. It holds as the night holds. Travelers who find this place often speak of a strange sensation, that upon entering, they feel watched, not by eyes, but by lights. That in the stillness, they sense presence, as though the painted constellations are not symbols, but doors. Some leave offerings, a coin, a candle stub, a whispered word. Others simply stand, unable to speak, listening to the hush until it becomes part of their breath. There are stories of those who spent a night here. They say that as they drifted into sleep, they dreamed of walking among stars, vast and infinite, each one pulsing like a heartbeat. Some awoke weeping, unable to say why. Others never spoke of what they saw. For the temple does not give visions to be shared. It gives silence, which belongs to the one who carries it. And so we stand once more in the chamber, its constellations faded, its silence whole. The lamps are gone, the priests are gone, the rituals are gone, but the temple of shadows and starlight remains. What was it for? To bind eternity into stone? To remind us of our smallness beneath the sky? To call the dead back into presence? No one knows. Perhaps it was all of these, perhaps none. The truth is not given. The truth lingers, veiled in silence, marked only by dust, by shadow, by faint glimmers on a painted ceiling. Perhaps it was never meant to be understood. Perhaps its purpose was simply this: to bring us into stillness, to remind us that the night is larger than we are, that we too are starlight folded into flesh, waiting one day to return to the great ocean above. And so we leave it. The stair ascends back toward the surface. The air warms. The moon hangs vast above the desert, its silver light flooding the dunes. Yet in your chest the temple remains. The painted constellations still glow faintly behind your eyes. The silence lingers in your breath. You carry it with you as those who entered before carried it, as those who built it intended. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Some stars only shine when we are willing to walk into shadow. Rest now. Let the temple of shadows and starlight guard your dreams. For even in sleep, you are part of the sky. It begins with dust, a thin veil drifting in a shaft of moonlight, each mote a small star turning slowly in the hush. The room is stone and shadow, a chamber set deep beneath the skin of the earth, where the air keeps cool memories and the floor remembers footsteps it has not felt for centuries. At the center, shelves lean like weary forests, their limbs bare, their leaves gone to powder. On a table rests a single scroll, its edges curled like the lips of a sleeping shell. It is said this is a library that burned without flame. No smoke ever rose from its roof. No embers ever flew. There was only the quiet work of time and the measured breath of silence, reading everything to pieces. Whispers tell us that once, this place was a living sea of voices. Papyrus and vellum, wood and reed, stone and clay, each line a wave rising to meet the eyes of those who came to drink. Priests in linen, travelers dusty from long roads, mothers holding infants against their hearts, so the child would hear the language of wisdom before it learned to speak. The shelves were full then. The lamps were tended like altars. The words glowed. Now only dust glows, lit by the moon. And yet, beneath the silence, something still hums. The old keepers called themselves guardians of breath. They believed that a text is not ink on a page, but a pact between the living and the listening. Each scroll was a vessel, and each reader the water poured into it. When the vessel cracked, the water did not vanish. It entered the air. They said that if you sit long enough between shelves, breathing softly, you will taste stories on your tongue the way a traveler tastes salt near the hidden sea. In forgotten corners of the earth, scholars still speak of this place, of rooms arranged by constellations rather than subjects, of aisles aligned to the wind so that a faint current moved always through the stacks, turning pages with a tenderness no hand could equal. It was here, some believe, that the art of listening was taught as a discipline. A novice would sit for a night with a single phrase, repeating it not as chant but as breath, until the phrase dissolved and left only presence. There were no ranks, no crowns. The highest honor was silence achieved without effort. It is said the library began to die the day the last keeper forgot the ritual of opening the shutters to let the night breathe with the books. Pages need darkness as well as light. Words thirst for coolness, for the slow dew of evening. When the shutters remained sealed, the air grew still. Still air is heavy. Heavy air presses. Pressed pages become fragile. Fragile pages break. Thus, without flame, a burning. Walk with me now, softly, between these shelves. The wood creaks like an old ship at anchor. A ladder, worn smooth by vanished hands, leans against nothing in particular, as if waiting for a reader who stepped away and never returned. On the floor lies a scatter of pigment, blue as deep sky, red as dark earth, the ghosts of illuminated letters. Here and there, bindings remain, tied with ribbons the color of faded rose. If you touch them, they sigh into powder, the rose turning to dust against your fingertips. Do not be afraid. Dust, too, is a kind of script. On the far wall, an alcove opens into a narrow chamber. A low table waits within, set with shallow bowls of sand. The guardians left these for those who wished to transcribe a thought that could not bear the weight of ink. They would trace it lightly in sand, Watch the idea breathe for a moment, then smooth it away with the flat of the hand, returning it to the ocean of unspoken knowing. Not every insight must be held. Some must be released to remain true. Beneath the table lies a small coffer, its lid warped. Inside, a single reed pen, a thread of gold, a bead of glass the color of the sky at dawn. These were the sacraments of the library, the tools of marking, the reminder of what connects, the bright seed of wonder. The reed pen writes, the thread binds, the bead returns us to awe. We do not take them. We let them rest, marked by the moon, in their cradle of shadow. There are stories the keepers preserved about the day the books began to go. Not all at once, not by theft, but by a kind of inward melting. The letters fainted, says one fragment carved into a beam. We blew gently upon them to wake them, but they became breath and would not return. Another account speaks of a sound like moth wings, constant and yet almost unreal, which turned out to be nothing but the soft collapse of words into dust. Some believe the library chose its own end, that it had gathered too much certainty, too many answers, too much naming. Knowledge, when held too tightly, grows brittle. Wisdom is softer. It prefers the curve of the ear to the edge of the blade. Perhaps the library remembered this and let itself unmake, piece by piece, until only the listening remained. Others say a wind from the salt plains began to move through unseen cracks, and the salt, gentle as prayer, drew the moisture from the pages until the pages surrendered. It is said that one night, during the final season of unmaking, the keepers assembled in the great hall. No lamps were lit. They sat in darkness, facing the shelves, and spoke not a word. In that shared silence, they offered the library back to the night from which it had been borrowed. When morning came, the first shelf had fallen, without crash or splinter, like a pilgrim laying down to rest. They did not move it. They bowed. A ritual of return had begun. Here, on this long table of cedar, lies a scroll that has lasted by accident or by grace. Its outer coils are friable, but the inner mouth remains intact, a spiral of breath preserved. If we lean close, we can see the faint marks of a hand trained to patience. Letters like slender reeds rising from still water, small strokes like gulls at a distance, wide spaces in which the eye may rest. The text is a psalm to the unknown. Beneath the silence, it says, there is another silence. Do not break either. Stand between them like a thin flame that neither burns nor is blown out. The author's name is gone. The date is gone. The place is here. When we read, the room seems to expand, not outward but inward, as if the walls were the inside of a lung that has remembered how to breathe. In the margins, a note in another hand. When you forget, read the spaces. The keepers taught this, to attend not only to the word, but to the hush around the word, the way the desert attends to the shadow of a bird crossing its vast face. Where memory fades, traces remain. A shelf marked with a carved shell, the section for sea stories, perhaps, where sailors wrote of oceans with stars for maps. A pillar etched with a cypress, meditations on grief and the long patience of roots. A beam stamped with a small moon, dreams gathered from those who slept among the books, their breaths weaving the pages into soft tide. It is evening now. The moon has climbed, sending a pale ladder through the high slit where stone gives the night a narrow door. Dust ascends and descends that ladder, a tender procession. The room feels less like a ruin and more like a chapel given back to the wild. The air holds the afterlife of ink. Imagine the librarians at their tasks when this room was full. The youngest carries a tray of lamp wicks, each one a quiet promise. The eldest walks the aisles, touching spines, not to claim, but to bless. The middle ones copy slowly, their shoulders rounded, their mouths moving with the words, not speaking them aloud, but letting them pass again through flesh, so the text will remember it was once breath. No one hurries. No one is corrected. When a mistake is made, the page is not scolded. The mistake is circled in gold, a ring of mercy around human error, to teach that wandering is part of walking. And the readers, how they arrived with their thirsts. One seeks a name for a grief that has no edges. One seeks the pattern of stars over a city that has fallen. One seeks a blessing for a child not yet born. One seeks only quiet. Each leaves with less weight than they brought, even if their hands are empty. For the library gave not merely answers, but a certain way of standing in the world, soft-kneed, open-palmed, like a reed listening to the river that may or may not return. Why, then, speak of it now when so little remains that may be held? Because absence, too, instructs. Because a room of dust can teach us how to carry our own archives gently. The letters we have written in anger, the prayers we have forgotten to finish, the faces we keep folded in the pocket of the heart. It is said that when a library dies, it does not vanish. It diffuses. The stories pass into the grain of tables, into the pores of stone, into the garments of those who once leaned here, into the very dust we breathe when we enter. And from dust they pass into us. Some travelers bring brooms and cloths, hoping to rescue what can be rescued. They sweep a little, then stop, struck dumb by the odd beauty of the ruin. These drifts like pale dunes, these heaps that shine faintly as if made of ground shells. They realize they are standing at the shore of a vast, uncharted sea. The oceanic hush of unlettered knowing. They lay their brooms down. They sit a while. They listen. Whispers tell us that on certain nights, when the moon is thin and the wind is neither hot nor cold, a murmuring rises here, not from mouths, but from the spaces between shelves. A chorus of what had been. Not words, exactly. Intimations. The sound a page makes when it remembers being a leaf. Those who have heard it say they left with tears they could not name. Not sorrow, not joy. Something like the relief of being part of a large and kindly forgetting. Perhaps it was never meant to be found again, this library. Perhaps the door we came through is itself a trick of light. Yet we stand within it, and it receives us. It shows us the arc of a page turning to dust without tragedy. The way day turns to night. The way ripe fruit softens. The way waves lie down on their own shores. It invites us to imagine a knowledge that knows when to end. A wisdom that steps back from itself like a tide, leaving shells of bright quiet for those who walk after. We could try to rebuild it. We could harvest reed and thread and gold. We could copy the single scroll that remains until our hands grow sore. But there is another way to honor what has been kept here. We can become what the keepers were, guardians of breath. We can hold our words lightly. We can remember to open our shutters to the night, so what we cherish may cool, may rest, may be read by moon as well as by sun. We can circle our errors with rings of mercy. We can leave bowls of sand for thoughts that must be written only to be released. And when we speak, we can let silence speak with us, so that the listening does not burn. The hour deepens. The dust has settled. The ladder of moonlight has grown faint. We pause at the threshold, and the room pauses with us, as if to give its last, gentle instruction. Read the spaces. The margin note whispers once more. Read the spaces, and you will never be empty. We bow not to shelves, not to books, but to the listening that once made them holy. We turn away. The corridor is cool. The stair returns us to sand. The night is an open page, star-marked and quiet. Behind us, the library rests, a low chamber of tender ashes, a place where flame was never needed because forgetting itself was a kind of sacred fire. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Some pages only turn when we are willing to dream. Rest now. The library that burned without flame keeps watch, not with walls, but with breath. And as sleep gathers, you may feel words without letters moving through you like a tide. An ancient, sacred tide, washing the day away, leaving you on a shore of gentle hush, where even memory loosens its hold and becomes, for a time, only starlight and salt and the soft, unending scroll of the night. It begins with stone, cut into silence. A passageway descends, narrow and sloping, carved not to hide but to align. The walls are etched with faint grooves, like ribs of the earth guiding us inward. At the end lies a chamber, still and eternal, its ceiling lifted toward the heavens though buried deep below. Here is a tomb unlike others, for it does not face inward toward the darkness of the body. It faces outward, toward the light of the stars. It is said that this resting place was built not to conceal death, but to reveal eternity. For when the builders raised its walls and shaped its passages, they did not look to the soil or to the sand. They looked upward to Orion's belt, to Sirius burning white, to the long river of stars stretched across the night. They aligned the tomb so that shafts of light would enter, thin and exact, striking the inner chamber with beams of heaven itself. The dead were not meant to sleep in silence, but to walk with starlight as their guide. Step closer into the chamber. The air is cool, touched with the dry sweetness of stone. The walls gleam faintly with mineral dust, as if stars themselves have fallen and been ground into the rock. Carvings remain. The falcon with wings outstretched, the serpent winding upward, the eye gazing wide and eternal. All of them are turned not toward the earth but toward the sky, their bodies lifted in the direction of light. Above, a narrow shaft pierces the stone, angled with precision. Once, long ago, at certain nights of the year, a star would shine through this passage, its light falling like a silent blessing onto the chamber floor. Imagine the darkness trembling with a single beam, pale, steady, celestial. Imagine it striking the face of a sarcophagus, as if the heavens themselves had bent down to anoint the sleeper. The priests believed that when breath left the body, it did not vanish into silence. It rose as fire rises, as light rises, as birds rise at dawn. And where it rose, it found companions. The stars, eternal fires, keepers of the souls that had gone before. To bury the dead beneath the earth was not enough. The dead must be given a path, a stair of light, a gate of stars. It is said that the ruler entombed here desired not gold, not armies, not endless offerings of bread and wine. He desired to be remembered among the constellations. His name, carved into stone, was meant to echo in the heavens. He wished his soul to shine as brightly as Orion, to be placed among the eternal hunters and keepers of the sky. And so, his tomb was crafted with care, aligned not with compass or mountain, but with the stars themselves. Each chamber, each corridor was drawn to mirror the sky. The ceiling was painted with constellations, a map of eternity traced upon stone. By lamplight, the priests would enter, chanting softly, their voices weaving with the light of stars that slipped down the shafts. They were not burying their ruler. They were lifting him step by step into the firmament. But time as ever passed. The lamps dimmed. The priests were forgotten. The stars, eternal though they seem, shifted slightly in their courses. The shafts no longer align as they once did. The beams do not fall where they were meant to fall. The sarcophagus is empty, its body stolen or lost. The name once carved deeply has faded to dust. And yet, the tomb remains, silent, watching, still aligned, still yearning upward. Even in its emptiness, it teaches that death is not merely an ending, but a turning of the face, from the dust to the starlight. Travelers who enter speak of a strange sensation. They say that standing beneath the narrow shaft, they feel the weight of the stars above them, as though the heavens are pressing close, peering into the chamber with endless eyes. Some claim to hear faint music in the silence, a hum like strings drawn tight across the night. Others say they dream more deeply here, their sleep filled with visions of endless stairways, each step carved of light. Perhaps it is imagination, perhaps it is memory, echoing from those who stood here long before. Or perhaps the tomb truly does face the stars, not in stone alone, but in spirit. It is said that when the ruler's body was first placed here, the priests whispered, "Rise now as the falcon rises, walk the river of stars, drink from the light that never fades." They believed the tomb was not a prison of stone, but a vessel of release. To lie here was to step into the eternal night sky, to join the constellations that keep their watch above the world. And so, even now, when the chamber is empty, when the shafts no longer align, the tomb whispers this promise, that death is not silence, that the stars are not distant, that we too, in time, will turn our faces upward and find ourselves reflected in their endless fire. We step back into the passage. The air grows warmer as the stair ascends. Above, the desert night stretches wide, the stars scattered like beads of glass across black velvet. The tomb lies beneath, a mirror of the sky, a reminder that the line between earth and heaven is thin, fragile, almost imaginary. Perhaps it was never meant to be a place of death. Perhaps it was always a place of memory, a stone vessel to remind us that we, too, are made of starlight, that we rise and fall, but the stars remain, that what we lose in dust, we gain in silence. And so the tomb waits, empty yet full, silent yet alive with presence, facing outward toward the sky. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Some lights only shine when we are willing to look upward. Rest now. The tomb that faced the stars keeps its vigil. And as you drift into sleep, perhaps you too will find yourself walking among the constellations, not as a stranger, but as one returning home. It begins with a shimmer, not the shimmer of water nor of flame, but of tiny beads strewn across the desert floor, glints of glass catching moonlight like droplets frozen in time. They lie half buried in the sand, scattered across a line so faint it might be mistaken for the track of wind. And yet, to those who pause and look closely, they seem deliberate. A necklace broken across the earth, a trail leading deeper into silence. It is said these beads are all that remain of a caravan that vanished. A procession of camels and riders, carrying silk and salt, spices and prayer, their silhouettes stretching long against the horizon. They moved steadily across the dunes, bells chiming softly in rhythm with hooves. But somewhere in the heart of the desert, beneath the watch of a burning sun, the caravan dissolved, as though swallowed whole by the sand. Nothing remained but these beads, scattered like stars fallen to the earth. Some believe the beads were formed by fire from the sky. They tell of a night when a meteor streaked across the heavens, striking the sand with such heat that it melted into glass. Bright droplets hardened in an instant. The caravan, passing through centuries later, gathered them as treasures. They strung them on cords, wore them as talismans, and carried them as charms against thirst. Others whisper that the beads were offerings, each bead a prayer left upon the earth, marking a vow, a hope, a blessing. When the caravan disappeared, the beads remained, the only testimony to voices now lost. And there are those who say the beads were not made by hands at all, but by the desert itself, that the sand, longing to be remembered, crystallized into glass where footsteps fell, each bead a memory, a small echo of the life that crossed here once. Walk with me now along the line of beads. They gleam softly, pale green, deep blue, translucent white, colors not of the desert, but of water, sky, and moon. Their edges are smooth, as though worn by countless fingers. Between them lie long stretches of emptiness, dunes curving like the backs of sleeping beasts. The beads are scattered, not gathered, as though the earth has tried to claim them and failed. Imagine the caravan itself, camels swaying with slow dignity, their eyes half closed against the sun. Cloth canopies shading riders dressed in flowing robes, faces veiled against the heat. At the front, a guide walks barefoot, staff in hand, his gaze fixed upon a horizon that never seems to draw nearer. Behind him, voices murmur, prayers are whispered, songs are hummed to pass the endless hours. Children ride pressed against their mothers, listening to the rhythm of bells. At night, the caravan halts, fires are kindled, and stories are told under the stars. Stories of rivers, of cities, of gardens, of all the things the desert does not give. Then silence. One morning, the fires are gone, the voices gone, the bells stilled. The sand shows no footprints, no collapse of tents, no trace of struggle or storm, only the beads, glowing faintly in the dawn. It is said the desert keeps what it chooses. Perhaps the caravan sank into an unseen hollow, buried in a single night by shifting dunes. Perhaps they turned aside, following a mirage, and walked into thirst too deep to escape. Or perhaps they were lifted into another world entirely, their bodies gone but their memory left behind, distilled into these beads. Travelers who find the trail often follow it, believing it leads to treasure, to a lost city, to water hidden in stone. Yet always the beads fade, scattered thinner and thinner, until they vanish entirely. The seekers stand upon bare sand, their hands empty, their hopes dissolving into wind. The caravan, it seems, cannot be found. And yet, the beads remain. A few here, a few there, sparkling faintly like crumbs of eternity. Scholars once collected them, keeping them in jars, measuring their weight, testing their colors. They found they were indeed glass, fused sand, hardened fire. Some bore tiny bubbles, as if breath itself had been trapped inside. Others carried faint scratches, marks of string where they once hung as ornaments. But the mystery of their scattering could not be solved. No record of the caravan exists. No merchant lists, no temple carvings, no names. The beads tell no story but their own. It is said, however, that if you hold one bead against your ear, as one holds a shell, you will hear more than silence. A faint chiming, like bells swaying in the wind, the sound of hooves upon sand, the murmur of voices, speaking in tongues now forgotten. Some who have listened claim the bead holds the memory of the entire caravan, as if each drop of glass is a vessel of time. Others say the sound is only breath echoing in a hollow shape, the mind weaving dreams where there is nothing. Perhaps both are true. Night comes, and the beads shine brighter under the moon. They catch the silver light and scatter it, so that the desert floor seems strewn with stars. It is easy, then, to imagine the caravan still moving, a line of shadows gliding silently across the dunes, their beads shimmering like constellations carried in hand. Some travelers leave offerings beside the beads. A sprig of dried herb, a coin, a whispered prayer. They say the caravan still walks in another world, and these offerings will reach them. Others gather the beads, stringing them into necklaces, believing they carry protection. Yet most leave them untouched, afraid to break the silence that guards them. What truth lies here? Was there truly a caravan that vanished? Did fire from the sky create these droplets of glass? Were they offerings, memories crystallized? Or is the story itself the treasure? A reminder that even in absence, something shimmers? The desert does not answer. The beads do not answer. They simply remain, scattered across the sand, patient, luminous, unbroken. And so we leave them, these small fragments of mystery. We do not take them, for they are not ours to keep. We leave them in their scattered line, a quiet scripture written by silence upon the desert floor. Perhaps the caravan never vanished at all. Perhaps it still walks, unseen, guided by starlight, its path marked by beads of glass. Perhaps the desert, in its mercy, lets us glimpse only what is gentle, the shimmer, not the thirst. Rest now. Let the beads be your stars, small and glimmering, leading you not into desert, but into sleep. A caravan moves within you, slow and patient, carrying nothing but silence. Its bells chime softly, like breath, like glass. It does not vanish. It walks on into dream. It begins with a hollow, a circle cut into the earth, lined with stone worn smooth by hands long gone. Once, water rose here, cool, dark, secret water, drawn up in clay jars and poured into waiting palms. Once, voices gathered around its rim, laughter echoing into the deep. But the water is gone now. The well is dry, its throat filled with silence, its mouth gaping wide beneath the stars. And yet, the stories say at midnight it sang. Not every night, not for everyone, but for those who came in quiet, who leaned close with breath held and heart listening. A sound would rise, soft, wavering, melodic. A song with no words, a hymn without source. Some said it was the earth remembering its waters. Others believed it was the voices of those who once drank here, echoing through eternity. Whatever it was, the sound lingered only until the first bird stirred in the darkness. Then silence returned, as if the song had never been. Step with me now, to the edge of this forgotten well. The stones are pale under the moon, cool to the touch, rough with lichen and dust. Peer inside. The darkness descends like an endless throat. No water reflects your face. No ripple catches starlight. Only emptiness, vast and resonant. And yet, if you listen, truly listen, you may hear something beneath the silence. A vibration, a hum, faint as a breath against your ear. It is said the song began long after the water was gone. Perhaps when the last drop dried, the earth itself grieved. Perhaps the memory of flow was too strong to fade, and so the well began to remember out loud. Perhaps each stone, once soaked, carried in it the resonance of water, and at midnight, the resonance awakened, turning absence into music. Some believed the song was a promise, that the waters would one day return, carried back by hidden veins beneath the sand. Others thought it a lament, a mourning for what was lost, sung by the desert itself. But most did not question. They only listened. Whispers tell us of travelers who camped near the well. Weary from long roads, they tethered their camels, spread their rugs, and sat in the hush of night. When the moon reached its peak, when the stars leaned close, they heard it. A thin note rising, trembling, growing into a melody that seemed both near and infinitely far. They did not speak, for fear of breaking it. They closed their eyes, letting the sound enter them. Some wept without knowing why. Others felt peace deeper than any sleep. When morning came, the well was silent again, as though mocking their memory. Priests once came to study it, bringing instruments of bone and reed, hoping to catch the song. They leaned their ears close, humming softly in reply, trying to join the music. But the song could not be captured. It was not air alone, not stone alone, not imagination alone. It was all three, woven together, a hymn that vanished as soon as it was sought. Imagine the song now, not a melody we could write in notes, not something that could be played on harp or flute. It was more like breath turning into light, a low hum, rising slowly, carrying with it something unnameable, sorrow, perhaps, or joy too vast for words, a sound that filled the chest, that stirred the bones, that made the air feel thick with memory. Some compared it to the cry of distant birds flying unseen at night. Others said it was like wind through reeds, soft and trembling. A few claimed it was unmistakably human, the voice of a woman singing to her child, or of a man calling out across a river. But no one agreed, and that, perhaps, was the point. The well gave each listener the sound they most needed to hear. It is said that one midnight, a child leaned too far into the well, hoping to hear the song more clearly. He did not fall, but he returned with eyes wide as though he had seen something vast. He told his mother that the well was not empty, that it was filled with stars, shining far below, each one singing its own note. The elders laughed, but some believed him. They said the well was not a mouth of earth, but a mouth of heaven, an opening through which the music of the spheres might drift into the world. Another story tells of a woman who came each night for 7 years, listening to the song. On the last night, she did not return to her tent. Her companions found only her sandals by the well, her scarf folded neatly on the rim. They leaned in, and for the first time, the song was not faint but thunderous, filling the air like a choir of countless voices. When dawn came, the song ceased, and she was never found again. Some say she walked into the song and the song received her. Scholars argue that the phenomenon was nothing but acoustics, the hollow throat of stone catching wind at a certain hour, resonating like a flute, the cool air of midnight moving against the warm air of day, creating vibrations that the ear mistook for music. Perhaps they are right, yet even the scholars admit, no other well sang so. No other hollow produced such mystery, and none can explain why the song always ceased before dawn, as if light itself forbade it. But must everything be explained? The desert teaches otherwise. Now the well lies lonely. Few come this way. The sand has drifted higher around its rim, covering half the stones. The wind sighs through the hollows, but the song is rare, if it comes at all. And yet the stories remain, passed from traveler to traveler, from parent to child, each one carrying the memory of a song they may never hear. Perhaps the song has not ended. Perhaps it waits for those who are willing to listen with more than ears, with patience, with stillness, with the open heart of night. Perhaps it is still there, beneath the silence, waiting for midnight. And so we stand here at the rim of the well. The desert is vast around us, the stars close, the moon marking our shadows. The darkness below is deep, endless, absorbing. Lean close, hold your breath, listen. Do you hear it? Faint vibration, almost nothing. A sigh in the stone, a tremor in the air, a note caught between silence and dream. It hums against the bones of your chest. It grows not louder, but deeper, until you feel it in the spaces between your thoughts. Perhaps it is the earth remembering its waters. Perhaps it is your own soul remembering itself. Perhaps there is no difference. The hour grows late. The song fades. The silence returns, gentle, sacred. The well is once again nothing more than stone and shadow. Yet something has entered us, soft as breath, unshakable as memory. Perhaps the well never sang at all. Perhaps the song was always within us, waiting for the silence of midnight to be heard. Perhaps the desert, in its kindness, lent us its throat so we might listen. Rest now. Let the well sing within you, faint and eternal. Let the hush of midnight draw you inward, until your own breath becomes the song, low, steady, endless. And when sleep comes, it will come like water, like starlight, like silence turned to music. It begins with a chamber, a hollow space beneath the desert, carved not with grandeur but with simplicity. A room whose walls curve inward like a cupped hand, whose floor is coated with a fine veil of dust. The ceiling arches low, painted once with figures now half vanished, their outlines blurred into shadow. There is no throne, no statue, no flame, only dust, unbroken, unmoved, waiting. It is said this was the dwelling of an oracle. Not an oracle who spoke in words or inscribed visions onto stone, but one who let dust itself be the tongue of prophecy. Pilgrims came to this chamber, knelt upon the earth, and watched the floor. A single breath of wind through a hidden crack would stir the dust into swirls and spirals, patterns that shifted like stars across a night sky. Those who believed saw in them messages, guidance, warnings, blessings, secrets. The oracle never spoke. The chamber itself was the voice. Step softly across the threshold. The dust greets you. It lifts with your footfall, rising in pale threads of smoke before sinking again. Each grain catches the light of your torch, gleaming for a moment like a tiny sun before returning to the earth. In this place, time feels fragile, as if the walls are listening, as if every movement leaves an imprint not on stone but on memory itself. Whispers tell us that pilgrims came from far lands, guided only by rumor. Some traveled for months, carrying nothing but a jar of oil, a loaf of bread, a hope they could not name. They descended into this chamber with silence, their eyes weary, their spirits bent. Here they would wait, not minutes, not hours, but nights, sitting, breathing, watching the dust until at last it stirred. And when it stirred, they saw. One man claimed the dust rose into the shape of a river, winding and shimmering in the torchlight. He returned home and found his village swept by floods. Another saw the outline of a child's hand. Months later, his daughter was born with the same small curve in her palm. A woman, veiled and trembling, saw only a circle that broke apart into fragments. Days later, her caravan was attacked, scattered across the desert. Not all who came received visions. Some saw nothing but dust. Yet even in that nothing, many left in peace. For the oracle gave not certainty, but reflection. The dust mirrored what already dwelled within, revealing truths too quiet to be heard until the silence was deep enough. It is said the oracle was not a person at all, not a priest hidden in the shadows, not a trick of light or hand. It was the desert itself, speaking through its smallest voice. Every grain carried within it a history, the shard of a mountain long eroded, the fragment of a shell once cradled by the sea, the powder of bones turned to silence. To watch the dust was to watch eternity scatter and reform, over and over, endlessly. Some believed that to read the oracle was dangerous, that dust reveals not only the path ahead, but the path beneath, the truths we hide from ourselves, the faces of those we have forgotten, the memories we tried to bury. To kneel here was to open the heart to the weight of time. To leave was to carry that weight forever. The chamber is still now. The cracks through which the wind once slipped are sealed by centuries of drift. The patterns no longer form. The dust lies undisturbed, thick and pale, a shroud over the stones. Yet if you sit quietly, you may feel it waiting, patient, infinite, ready to move again when breath or silence commands it. Imagine, for a moment, closing your eyes here. The air is cool against your skin. You hear nothing but your own breathing. Then, faintly, a tremor, a stirring. You open your eyes, and the dust lifts. Not by wind, not by hand, but by some unseen presence. It swirls into lines, into circles, into shapes you cannot hold on to, for they dissolve as soon as they appear. Your heart whispers, "This is for me," and then it is gone, leaving only stillness once more. Travelers who returned from this place carried more than visions. They carried silence. They spoke less, listened more. They seemed to walk with lighter steps, as if the dust had entered their blood, reminding them that everything crumbles, everything shifts, and yet nothing is lost, only transformed. One pilgrim wrote in his journal, "The oracle told me nothing, yet I left as if I had heard everything." Another wrote, "I asked for the future. It showed me only dust. I understood that this, too, is the answer." Scholars, centuries later, tried to explain it. They said the chamber's shape created currents invisible to the eye, causing the dust to move in natural patterns. They spoke of air pressure, of drafts, of the delicate weight of sand. Perhaps they were right, but the pilgrims would say, "Does it matter? If a circle in the dust brings us peace, if a spiral reminds us of eternity, if the shifting of grains awakens our soul, is that not prophecy enough?" And so the oracle remains, silent now, buried deeper each year by sand and time. Its chamber echoes only with the breath of those who wander into it by chance. Yet the dust is still there, endless and waiting. It does not need words. It does not need proof. It simply lies, patient as the desert, ready to rise when the time is right. Perhaps the oracle has never ceased speaking. Perhaps every wind that stirs across the dunes, every swirl of sand across stone, is its voice. Perhaps the desert itself is one vast oracle, its prophecies written not in ink but in shifting grains. We step back now, leaving the chamber behind. The desert night receives us once more. Above, the stars turn silently, scattering their own dust across the sky. The wind moves, faint and soft, brushing our faces like a whisper. It carries with it something we cannot name. Not vision, not word, but presence. Perhaps the oracle was never meant to answer. Perhaps it was meant only to remind us that all answers shift, that all truths dissolve, that wisdom is not a solid stone but a swirl of dust, rising and falling endlessly. Rest now. Let the oracle of dust guide you inward. Close your eyes. Feel the silence stir. And if a vision comes, whether circle, spiral, or nothing at all, let it be enough. For in the end, every dream is dust, and every grain of dust carries eternity. It begins with walls half buried in sand. Stone upon stone, stacked in forgotten order, rising not as towers of might but as ruins softened by time. Their edges are rounded, their carvings faint, their outlines blurred into the desert horizon. By day, the fortress seems nothing more than rock weathered by centuries of sun. But by night, when the moon ascends and shadows deepen, the stones breathe. Their warmth lingers, drawn from the heat of day, exhaling softly into the cool air. It is said that if you listen closely, the fortress hums in its sleep. This is the fortress of sleeping stones, not abandoned, not broken, but resting. It is said that long ago soldiers stood upon these walls. Their spears glimmered in the firelight, their chants echoed through the courtyards, their oaths sealed in the hush of starlit nights. The fortress was strong then, Its gates were iron. Its wells flowed sweet. Its chambers resounded with the clang of armor, the scrape of sharpening blades, the low hum of prayers offered before dawn. But the desert is patient. It need not storm a wall. It waits, wind by wind, grain by grain. It wears away stone. It silences the clang. It swallows the oaths. When the wells dried, the soldiers laid down their arms. When the gates cracked, the prayers ceased. Some departed. Some remained until their bodies turned to dust. And yet the fortress did not fall. It did not crumble into ruin. It endured not awake, but asleep. The stones, heated by sun, cooled by moon, learned to breathe. The silence grew deep. Its walls became less a defense than a memory, standing in watch over emptiness. Step with me inside. The courtyard is vast and hollow, its flagstones broken, its fountain filled with sand. Echoes linger here, faint footsteps on stone, whispers carried by the wind. The towers loom, their staircases spiraling upward into shadow. Climb them, and you will find no watchman, no flame, only the desert spread wide and endless, stretching beyond sight. In one corner, a chamber still stands. Its walls are etched with marks, not words but scratches, as if made by blades. Some say they were tallies, the count of days in exile. Others claim they were charms, carved to protect against what could not be named. The chamber is small, its ceiling low, but its silence is immense. Sit here long enough, and you may feel the walls themselves breathing, as though the stones keep company with one another. Whispers tell us that the soldiers who remained did not truly die, that when the wells dried and the gates broke, they chose another fate. They pressed their foreheads against the walls, placed their hands upon the stones, and let themselves dissolve into silence. Slowly, their flesh fell away, their armor melted into the earth, their breath joined the wind. What remained of them entered the stone itself. And so the fortress sleeps, not empty, but full of souls. Each stone a keeper, each wall a choir of silent watchmen. Their voices do not shout, do not command. They hum faintly, felt more in the chest than heard in the ear. At night, when the air cools and the moon climbs, the hum rises, the exhalation of the fortress, breathing not for defense, but for memory. Some travelers claim to have heard it. They speak of nights when the fortress seemed alive, its stones trembling with a low vibration, like the drone of distant drums. Some say they saw shapes moving along the walls, shadows without bodies, pacing their endless watch. Others felt hands upon their shoulders, heavy yet gentle, guiding them toward rest. A few swore that they heard words, spoken not in any tongue, but in the rhythm of their own heartbeat. It is said that those who sleep within the fortress dream deeply. Their dreams are not their own, but the dreams of the stones, memories of ancient battles, of oaths sworn in silence, of the long patience of desert nights. Some awaken with tears, others awaken with peace, as though the fortress itself has lent them its stillness. Scholars, as always, try to explain. They say the fortress hums because of heat, the sun warming the stone by day, the night air drawing it out again in slow exhalations. They say the sounds are tricks of wind moving through hollow corridors. They say the dreams are born of suggestion, of stories told too often by campfire. Perhaps they are right, yet even scholars fall silent here, for the fortress is not only stone, it is presence. To walk its courtyards is to feel watched, not in menace, but in patience. To rest against its walls is to feel supported, as though leaning against the memory of countless others who once leaned there too. The desert has not claimed it fully. Sand presses against its gates. Wind eats at its towers. Yet the fortress endures, not because it resists but because it rests. It has learned the lesson the soldiers never could, that strength is not in standing against, but in lying down with. The desert is not its enemy. The desert is its blanket. Together they sleep. Perhaps one day the walls will fall stone by stone. Perhaps the desert will bury it whole. But even then the fortress will remain, not as ruin but as rhythm. The hum of its stones will drift upward with the wind, scattering across the dunes, singing faintly to the stars. And so we leave it, this fortress of sleeping stones. Its watchtowers stand quiet, its courtyards empty, its silence vast. Yet it is not abandoned. It is full of memory, full of presence, full of breath that is not breath, life that is not life. Perhaps it was never meant to defend against armies. Perhaps it was always meant to defend silence itself. To keep it safe, to keep it sacred, to keep it alive in a world too loud. Rest now. The fortress breathes around you. Its stones hum in the hush of night. Lean into their rhythm, and let them carry you inward, into stillness, into dream. For some fortresses are not meant to be entered, but to be listened to. And some voices only echo when we are ready to fall asleep beside them. It begins with silence. A silence so vast, it feels not like emptiness, but like a veil draped across the land. Beneath it lies a kingdom, not ruined, not destroyed, but asleep. Streets buried beneath sand, towers softened into dunes, doorways sealed by centuries of stillness. It is said that no cry of war, no fire, no flood erased this place. Instead, it drifted gently into slumber, as if an entire people laid their heads down one night and never rose again. This is the kingdom that never woke. Whispers tell us of its beauty. Walls of alabaster gleaming like dawn. Gardens lush with lilies and palms, watered by hidden springs. Courtyards filled with incense and song, their air alive with prayers that rose like smoke into twilight. Merchants spread carpets heavy with spices and glass. Children ran laughing through arcades, and priests lit lamps at the gates as the sun fell. It was not a small place, but a vast one. A jewel set in the desert, bright enough to be seen for miles. And yet it is gone. Not shattered, not erased, but folded into the dunes, wrapped in silence as carefully as a body wrapped in linen. Some say the sand rose slowly, filling streets grain by grain, until the last rooftops sank. Others believe it was the people themselves who chose to sleep, carrying their city inward into dream. For no bones have been found, no weapons, no sign of panic, only silence, deeper than stone. Step with me into its imagined streets. The sand presses soft where stone once lay. Each footfall seems to sink not into emptiness, but into memory. Here, perhaps, was a fountain where water once sparkled. Here, the shadow of a tower, tall and solemn. Here, a market stall, its goods turned to dust but its space still alive with faint echo. At night, under the moon, the kingdom is easier to believe. The dunes glisten, their curves like sleeping bodies. The wind moves softly between them, as though weaving through streets no longer there. Sometimes, travelers swear they hear bells. Not loud, but faint, drifting on the air. The sound of a gate opening. The sound of voices murmuring in prayer. The sound of a city breathing in its sleep. It is said that those who dream near the buried kingdom see its people, not as ghosts but as sleepers. Men and women resting with eyes closed, children curled in their mothers' arms, priests lying beside altars, merchants with their hands folded on chests. They do not stir, do not speak, but their faces are calm. Dreamers wake with tears, unable to say why. Some claim the people live still, in a dream beneath the earth. Their breath the wind that crosses the dunes. Their murmurs the sound that rises when sand shifts at midnight. Others whisper that the kingdom sleeps waiting, that when the right hand touches its gates, when the right word is spoken, when the right star passes overhead, the city will rise again. Its towers shedding sand, its wells filling, its bells ringing once more. Until then, it rests, not lost, not gone, only waiting. Scholars have searched, digging at dunes, tracing faint lines with instruments and maps. They find fragments, a broken tile, a shard of painted pottery, a step cut into stone. But the city itself refuses. It remains beneath, as if the desert itself were a guardian, hiding what cannot yet be revealed. And perhaps it is right to remain hidden. For what would we do if we found it? Would we dig it out, expose it to the harsh light of day, strip its silence away? Would we pry into its dreams, demanding answers it is not ready to give? The kingdom is wiser than we are. It knows that some truths must remain folded in shadow. Some voices speak only in sleep. The desert teaches patience. Grain by grain it covers. Grain by grain it reveals. It does not hurry. It does not forget. The kingdom rests in its arms as a child rests in the arms of a parent. Cradled, protected, unseen yet present. Perhaps this is its lesson, that not all endings are endings. Some are transformations. Some are simply sleep. Perhaps the kingdom teaches us that there is holiness in rest, that there is eternity not only in stars but also in silence. We stand now upon its resting place. The moon is high, the stars bright, the dunes curved like shoulders under a blanket. The air is still, holding its breath. Beneath our feet the kingdom sleeps. Close your eyes. Can you feel it? The pulse beneath the sand. The slow rhythm of breath, steady and eternal. The faint hum of voices, speaking not in words but in silence. The kingdom is here, alive in its own way, living not in time but in dream. Perhaps it was never meant to wake. Perhaps it is we who must learn to dream with it. And so we leave it, this kingdom of silence. We do not dig, we do not disturb. We honor its rest. We walk away knowing it is still there, beneath the dunes, beneath the stars, waiting without urgency, waiting without sorrow. Some truths are not lost. They are only dreaming. Some kingdoms are not gone. They are only sleeping. Rest now. The kingdom that never woke will keep its vigil beneath the desert. Its breath will move in the wind. Its bells will ring in your dreams. Its silence will fold around you like the sands around its towers. And as you drift into sleep, you walk its streets once more. Not in ruin, but in wholeness. Not in loss, but in peace. You walk among its people, calm in their slumber, their eyes closed against the noise of the world. And you too close your eyes. The kingdom sleeps. And now so do you. It begins with return. Not a return to walls or gates, nor to cities of stone or libraries of dust, but to the soft vastness of the desert night. You have walked among ruins and temples, wells and fortresses, kingdoms that slept and maps that dissolved. You have touched parchments, stones, beads, and shadows. Each was a story, each was a threshold. And yet, beneath them all, there was only silence. The silence has been waiting, patient, unbroken, eternal. It gathers you now, gently, like a tide rising to the shore, covering your footsteps until no trace remains. Whispers tell us that journeys do not end. They fold into stillness. The map fades back into parchment. The ink dissolves into dust. The city that drowned without water lies quiet beneath the moon, its fountains stilled. The gate of the seven winds opens only into breath. The temple of shadows keeps its stars hidden behind painted ceilings. The library of dust hums with words no longer written. The tomb gazes upward, its shaft misaligned but its promise intact. The caravan glimmers faintly in beads scattered across sand. The well sighs in its sleep. The oracle waits, its dust unmoved. The fortress breathes through its stones. And the kingdom rests, as it always has, dreaming in silence. Each place you have visited has not asked for answers. Each has offered only presence. And presence is enough. Breathe now as the desert breathes. Slow, steady, soft. Each inhale is the drawing in of starlight. Each exhale is the laying down of weight. The mysteries you have heard tonight, they do not need to be solved. They were never meant to be. They are meant to drift within you like sand across a plain, forming and unforming shapes, leaving only the calm of stillness. It is said that silence is the oldest story. Before rivers sang, before cities rose, before lamps were lit, silence held them all, like seeds waiting in the dark. Tonight you return to that story. You are not separate from the desert, nor from the starlight, nor from the ruins and the kingdoms that have gone. You are part of the same vast hush. Close your eyes. Feel the weight of your body soften. Let your breath slow until it is the breath of the earth itself. Around you, the night deepens. The sands lie still. The stars shine without asking to be named. Perhaps all history is only a dream the earth tells itself. Perhaps we, too, are part of that dream, brief as wind, bright as a spark, fading back into dust. Perhaps the true kingdom is not found beneath dunes or painted ceilings, but in this very moment. The quiet of your chest rising and falling, the hush between each thought, the starlight gathering behind your eyes. The ruins you have walked tonight are not gone. They are within you now. You carry the map, the well, the gate, the temple, the library, the tomb, the caravan, the oracle, the fortress, the kingdom. Each is a chamber of silence in your own heart. Each will remain, ready to open whenever you remember them. But for now, they are closing one by one, like doors folding softly shut. The map curls back into silence. The city sinks again beneath its thirst. The gate narrows, becoming only breath. The temple dims its stars. The library folds its last page. The tomb exhales its starlight. The caravan dissolves into shimmer. The well falls quiet. The oracle lies still. The fortress breathes slowly. The kingdom sleeps. And beyond them all, the silence remains. Rest now. Let the desert night hold you. Let the silence enter your bones, your breath, your dreams. There is nothing left to seek, nothing left to know, nothing left to hold. Only the stillness, sacred and endless. Perhaps it was never knowledge that we sought, but this, the calm that comes when all stories end, and only silence lingers. The quiet that receives us as the desert receives its stars. Sleep now. The ruins are safe. The winds are gentle. The stars are watching. You are part of the hush that carries all things. And in that hush you will find rest.